My man Donovan in our reaction to this episode brought up an interesting point about how Death Battle has ended up on a streak of episodes including characters to whom I have a strong connection to. And while I am not someone who particularly cares for Blade vs Buffy as a matchup, I was excited to see what the episode was like. Being our third live-action fight on Death Battle, and with the incredible quality increase between the first and the second, I was really interested in seeing what Isma Hawke would cook up for this. Now, I am a very big fan of the Buffy series. It's been a few years since I last watched it, but I enjoy the whole thing. I love the spin-off show Angel as well. My favourite characters are probably Spike and Lorne, but Angel and Buffy are themselves goats as well. Giles is up there too. And honestly, Wesley, but only in Angel when he really starts to come around. Willow as well. Love Willow. Blade is a character I struggled to get into because I love his movie adaptation. Wesley Snipes' Blade is genuinely one of the coolest comic book movie characters of all time. But this isn't movie Blade. This is comic Blade. I don't think I've read a single one of Blade's comics. He might have featured in the background of a different comic or two that I've read, but otherwise I have no strong ties to this version of the character. With that being said, how was the episode in terms of getting me into the 616 version of Blade, and satisfying me as a fan of Buffy? I want to point something funny out. I guess I never processed Wiz and Boomstick being here at the start of every episode. I don't know why, but in the reaction to this one, I was like, oh wait, they're animated. But like, it's been like this all year. I don't know why I've just like mentally blocked out this exact same sequence of animation that's used in every episode. Don't ask. I have no idea. And okay, Death Battle's mentioned cultural folklore of some kind immediately. You know I have something to say about it, so let's get the part where Nemesis shows his undiagnosis and starts talking about folklore. So the difficulty with vampires sometimes is that the modern word we use today has come to refer to so many things that it's hard to get a single solid lock on what a vampire is. Today we accept it as an undead creature that dies of sunlight, feeds on the blood of others, and turns those people into more vampires, with extra weaknesses to holy symbology and garlic. With that said, you'd be hard-pressed to find any singular entity that represents these things entirely. In fact, there are some proto-versions of vampires that predate holy symbology at all, and some that are divine, such as the goddess Kali. But let's look at the ones that Death Battle specifically uses as alternate names for vampires at the start of Blade's analysis. There's Revenants, who get their name from Old French, meaning to come back or return. This one is weird. Vampires have been considered by some as a type of Revenant, specifically Revenants of like really evil people or witches. A Revenant is just a type of undead though. It's sometimes used interchangeably with words like undead itself or ghost, because it applies to so many different things. It's not wrong to say they are Revenants, but you could reasonably say that about Slimer from the Ghostbusters. Vodalak is definitely a stronger choice. This is a type of Slavic creature that drinks the blood of its loved ones and turns them into more of itself, which is great. Sounds a lot like a traditional modern vampire. Except that this is not the standard word for a Russian vampire. That would be upur. Vodalak originates from the 19th century. While the earliest common usage seems to be from an 1836 poem, I could not for the life of me find the poem itself. However, I was able to find 1939's The Family of the Vodalak by Alexei K. Tolstoy. Someone on WordPress had found the whole book, translated to English, and put it on Dropbox. I'll link the post in the description, you can go read it yourself if you're interested. It's only like 26 pages. This seems to be the origin of what we refer to today as the Vodalak. Vodalak. God, I just keep struggling to say it consistently. In this story, an old man named Gorcha leaves his family to hunt down a Turkish robber named Abilek alongside a party of many others. He tells his children and grandchildren that if he takes longer than 10 days to return, they should stake him in the heart. At the same time, Marquis Duif appears. The story is actually told by himself as an old man, relaying an adventure he claims to have had. Gorcha returns exactly 10 days after he left, leaving the family unsure on what they should do, as it has been neither less than or more than 10 days. It turns out he has become a Vodalak, a type of vampire that feasts on its loved ones and transforms them, as I said earlier. Gorcha kills his grandson overnight, and the Marquis is escorted out of the home not long after, because he had the hots for the sister of Dorda, the son of Gorcha, who is head of the house. When he later hears stories of what happened to the family, he finds out that the lady is the only one who remains. The others have been transformed into monsters while she simply went mad. Only to go back, find out that she had also been turned, and make a daring escape on horseback. An escape that involves the Marquis choke-slamming the lady vampire of his horse, Gorcha chasing him using stakes as poles in the ground to propel himself right as I smash my phone straight off the table, and Dorda's wife throwing the child vampires at him like projectiles, which is awesome and funny. It's a fun enough novella, an interesting piece of literary history. All I have to say, Voldulak is an acceptable word to use to refer to a vampire. And obviously, you know what Nosferatu is, as the name of the unofficial 1922 silent film adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, itself a word that's used twice to refer to vampires roughly in the novel itself, which Bram Stoker claimed to be from Emily Gerard, who claimed it to be the Romanian word for vampire, but that doesn't seem to be true. But there's also Wilhelm Schmidt, who earlier said that it's really nothing more interesting than a way to refer to vampire, just not in Germanic tongue. In every way, it just refers to vampire, even if you take the Greek disease-bearer theory to be true. Anyway, Blade's analysis is great. Remember we were talking about Blade? The start with the fucking terrible old Blade design is really great. I like the running bit of Wiz being stunned that nobody's helping Blade deal with the vampire threat. He really seems to think that Count Dracula is somehow worth the time of a Norse god and radiation Satan. The analysis isn't anything special to me, but as Blade is a character I know much less about, he did have an advantage compared to, say, Miles, where I knew all of his powers. There was really nothing interesting or new there. Blade has a lot of weapons and shit I just didn't know about. The breathing gun in particular is sick in both senses of the word. They worked in some story, they got in some fun moments, it's a good time. I do have a few fucking bones to pick though. First of all, yeah, the whole bit about Blade not being alone, he's got his daughter, is nice and all, but look at this. This is nice, wonderful purple hair, maybe a little close to the pinky shade, but this is not quite a Cronus situation where whether it's purple or pink is just completely dependent on the artist. This motherfucker, though, is wearing a wig. Her hair is black. He does not have purple hair. You fucking liar. On the other hand, man, Zarathos, you fucking bum. Not only did your triumphant return to Death Battle involve you getting stomped by a character so much weaker than you, he wasn't even cosmologically able to physically hit your real body, but then in the same motherfucking year, you get shown getting impaled by one of Blade's weapons. A weapon that can kill you, and did turn you to stone, though Death Battle doesn't exactly say that, but that is a weapon that then goes on to not be considered notable enough to show up in the fight, does not get mentioned in the conclusion at all, and the weapon that does get a leg up on it, both in terms of getting name dropped in the conclusion and showing up in the fight, gets sliced in half in that fight. The guy who beat you gets taken out by someone who wasn't even given cosmic stats, using a weapon that caps out at taking down cosmic beings ranked lower than the guy you previously lost to. By God, you don't only fight like a bum, you is a bum! Buffy, sadly, I have much less to say about in her analysis. It's not bad, I think it's a great one. It just includes, you know, it's a ton of more interesting feats people probably would have missed, I think. It's really not many more moments than me pointing and going, hey, I'm Leonardo DiCaprio now. Nice to see Angel get name dropped. Death Battle can be a bit wishy-washy in who they name drop and who they elect to ignore. Viral. Death the Kid. Whitebeard? Fucking Atreus? But this one's mostly fine. No mention of a few characters are sad, especially no Spike. He is the one she fucked the building to death with. But like, it's just overall solid. I feel like the emphasis on the novels and such was a bit underwhelming in the end. I guess because I was expecting more than just them mentioning a handful of small power scaling things and like hacks resistances. And the quotes themselves are so briefly on screen that it can be hard to tell it's just hard to tell what's being said without pausing sometimes. I'm a pretty quick reader too. This is just a thing with Buffy's side a bit more than Blade's because it's all text gyrating around instead of nice concise text boxes in comics. Otherwise, like, Buffy's is fun. I can't blame them too much for not focusing on anything interesting in the novels. It is just a supplement to the main shit that is Buffy. But it's really just the fact that they make a big deal about, oh, we went through 128 novels and we got 3 quotes. They covered a main arc well. Sad that a mother thing wasn't directly mentioned because that's like the most devastating moment in the show. The glory hole joke was not funny, but then it came around to being funny, so points, the not funny part was kind of intentional. But then there's the fight, which is 8 minutes long. Now that's a little misleading, I won't lie. It's not 8 minutes of Blade vs. Buffy, but it is 8 minutes of good shit. It's generally some of the best production value Death Battle's ever had, partially cheating by value of being in live action, I'll admit, but in comparison to the last 2 live action episodes, it's so much nicer. Nightwing vs. Daredevil is pretty bland and interesting to look at. There's nothing noteworthy, it looks boring. I can't blame them, I think it was meant to be shot on a rooftop, but they just couldn't get that to work, so I get it. Winter Soldier vs. Red Hood has a much more defined look, but even then it can be a bit bland at times. Buffy vs. Blade, however, goes for this heavy, shadowy blue nightclub. Very nice, along with a really trippy shitter that shows up for a brief part of the scuffle. The lighting here is perfect, capturing the Blade trilogy fantastically. It genuinely feels like Buffy walked into the world of the Blade movies. What helps even more is the vibe and the music. The music, I don't know if I'd listen to it on its own, it's not my scene, but Neon Ash perfectly captures the music of the Blade films. Despite having maybe the lamest track art ever conceived, this is a very good techno beat that feels perfect for Blade. The intro also is perfectly Blade. For one thing, I mean, these are Blade vampires. They don't have the Buffy vampire weird face thing going on. Understandable, that's a lot more prosthetic work than just some fangs and contacts. And the whole rambling about vampires needing to feast and go back to their savage traits. It also feels like it'd be in like some teen television series about vampires. Like, this is the cool character who's like, oh, we need to rise up from the shadows, dude. And the whole scene is definitely framed after the Club Blood scene. Blade then immediately aura farms with the T2 shotgun spin. Blade is played by Dushan Fiction Stegal, whose name I hope I pronounced right because he is an officially recognized complete badass. I'm also going to assume it's Stegal because Stegel makes me think of the chicken nugget. He perfectly captures Blade. Mostly. He manages to capture Blade's look without just trying to replicate Snipes. And most importantly, he's able to wear sunglasses in a nightclub without looking like a complete moron. That is an important skill. He is fantastic with his character acting, pulling off the seamlessly cool and effortlessly smooth action of a character. The kind of guy who doesn't really need to try to aura farm, it just comes to him naturally. And ergo, whenever he tries, he comes off as needlessly extra in a charmingly silly way. He drops a vertical suplex into a kip-up that does nothing to actually kill the vampire, only to reveal the entire time he didn't need to do any of that because he could have just killed them all with a light grenade. All this, he did it because he could. That's it. It is the physical beatdown version of because I said so. I love this moment. There's like the silly smile to camera. Might be one of my favorite shots in the whole episode. Now, where Fiction does fall a bit short, and is probably the thing most people familiar with Blade had to take a moment to get used to, or didn't get used to at all, is something that's also so understandable that I'd hardly call it a criticism. Let's talk about the voice. So yeah, this is not like any interpretation of Blade that I'm aware of. A character often portrayed with a deep, smooth voice. That said, Fiction is a person, a real guy. He can't change the fact that that's his voice. And he also had to wear prosthetic fangs as well. I do think that sadly his first delivery is his weakest. It definitely sounds the most high-pitched of them, and that might be what makes the voice more notable, because he starts with "not anymore," which definitely does sound more higher pitched than his other lines. If he had the kind of tone he used with some of his other lines, I think people wouldn't have noticed as much. I wouldn't say it's squeaky or mousy. He's not coming in like, "Some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill," or anything. There would have been ways to make the voice a bit better, such as dubbing it over with Fiction when he doesn't have fangs. I watched the reaction he did to this episode. I know he can do a pretty good deeper voice that still sounds natural. I wonder if I could like work his ones in. I wonder if they match up to, like, if they lip sync well.
You out your damn mind? There's always some motherfucker trying to ice skate uphill. Listen, you cut through adamantium.
Yeah, it's probably more work than it's worth. Every day, I'll take a younger sounding Blade if it means this sick-ass extended intro. It helps that, to my knowledge, he did most of, if not all of his stunts. I don't know if Buffy's actress did the same, but Fiction cooked. He brings the kind of effortless intensity the role needs, with his action for most of the fight being smooth and flawless, only looking like he really is putting in the effort after Buffy overpowers him and realizes he can't fuck around here. In fact, he is so cool, I might just go watch some of his content and maybe immediately find out I'm pronouncing Fiction wrong. I'm Asian. It makes for a good contrast between states, and while I'm not sure if he went into that vampiric bloodlust because he doesn't seem bloodlusted, he does get more aggressive when he needs to. The whole extended intro, as mentioned, is great, featuring tons of cameos from the crew such as Chad James as Victim, Liam Swan as Irrelevant Death that only serves to give Blade more chances to aura farm. It's not Akane just because she's Asian and has black hair, but if it was, I'm glad she's fucking dead. And Benjamin B. Singer as the DJ who embraces the sweet release of death, because he realized he had the chance for the toughest way any vampire has ever been slain. You know, they say people only come back from the dead when they have unfinished business, and I think this was his unfinished business. The fight itself begins with what I'd call a pretty good instigation. Buffy's dazed by the light bomb, Blade goes to help the young lady who survived, but the breathing gun alerts him to her being too far gone, so he caps her. Buffy only gets to see part of it and doesn't get the full context, so she's understandably mad. Blade, being the kind of guy to aura before thinking, tries to give the coolest response he can and refuses to explain. He's kind of an asshole. Then they fight. There is something to be said for how Blade goes to kill Buffy when he knows he could just explain himself better, and he knows that she's not necessarily a bad guy, but I think by this point they've justified the fight enough that I'm willing to just buy into the story they're trying to tell. most of what is there is the fantastic action that follows. Blade cooks so hard, with Buffy getting a few moments as well, like her scrappiness and using her own outfit as a weapon to take one of Blade's swords, and that's about it. Buffy does get to overpower Blade for a moment and then elbow whack him out of the shit zone. She also smashes a bottle over his head, which again is a nice way to show her scrappier fighting style that takes more advantage of what's around her compared to Blade's reliance on just being him. Mare Mulroney of internet embarrassment fame plays Buffy and does a great job. She doesn't get as much time to really show off as Blade in my opinion, only having a few moments, and I think, like Fiction, her voice isn't quite hitting it as Buffy. Between recording, I rewatched the reaction and he does call himself Fiction, so whoops. Most people didn't bring this up due to lack of familiarity, but there is a particular tone to Sarah Michelle Gellar's performance that isn't captured, but Mare gets a total of 6 lines, of which only one is particularly memorable, so it is what it is. However, I guess I'm also less bothered because a Buffy that's older isn't out of the ordinary. People do get older, compared to a Blade who feels comparatively young for a man who's 100 years old. Again though, that's just the actress's voice, and I definitely take her overall great performance over just having a right voice. While Fiction mostly had to portray slick and effortless with hints of seething down the line, Mare gets to portray a lot of panic, cockiness, distress, intense pain, exhaustion, surprise, just a lot more due to the far more dynamic emotions of the character in question. She is a great actress here, in particular, the pained grunt, lock-in, and retaliation when Blade stabs her. You can feel the emotion, you can feel Buffy fighting through the pain to keep herself in the fight. This moment also lets Fiction show a bit more emotion too. He does get across... What? The fight overall takes place in 4 phases, the first one being the intro sequence, so 3 real phases in terms of the fight itself. The first phase of the main fight is just Blade aura farming. All Buffy can do is get one of his swords, but Blade is so effortlessly cool, I mean look at that cocky ass shoulder bump. The second part is probably the most interesting and probably my favourite part of the fight, the bit in the trippy bathroom. A place that I will reiterate from my reaction, looks like the coolest possible location to the types of 2000s teenagers who are obsessed with urban vampire content. This also has some of my favourite camera work. The shot of the two going towards the camera are fun, if silly. I love the top-down rotating shots in the stall as well. And this is the best moment of the fight for pure character in my opinion as well. Not only giving us moments of Buffy showing her cockiness and determination as said, but also one of Blade's few showings of emotion and a brief dialogue between them. Calling back to Buffy's criticism of Hollywood action and showing off her arrogance, while Blade gets his second of 2 shoehorned in movie references in this one scene. I'm not too bothered, but I wish they were able to come up with a fun spin on it. The out of your damn mind line earlier is also a bit weird. I'm not sure what spurred him to say that. She just knocked his glasses off, I guess. I guess they just wanted to work in the reference. This is a banger part of the movie though, people should watch that movie, it's excellent. The final part of the fight involves Buffy wielding and Blade using his adamantium sword. The breathing gun also features, which I should note is a brilliantly done prop that looks fittingly disgusting. The way it bleeds when sliced to death is so nice. I love the shot of the one bullet Buffy dodged instead of slicing, just flying past the camera to hit her anyway. I love the weapon fight coming up, but I really like the shot right before it too. The exchange they have is pretty generic, though the delivery of "another sword" absolutely screams of how Gellar would have said it. It is the most authentic delivery in the fight in terms of matching the character's common portrayals to me. A small thing, but we take small victories. It's really just the great character acting in this bit. We're at the end of the fight. Blade's healing factor is so much better and he's avoided taking damage throughout the whole fight, so that he's just kind of ready to go with no issues. Has he taken a hit? I think he's been punched. Buffy, however, doesn't have that kind of healing, and being the general underdog most of the time, she has a much more ragged look. Instead, she looks like she's trying to get into a combat stance, but she's so exhausted she can only go so far. She manages to do enough that it seems like she's almost taunting Blade as well. Yeah, she's too tired to really prepare for a clash with a proper weapon stance, but the fact that she can stand at all is a testament to the fact that you suck. The action itself is very good. There are a few moments of what feels like that Hollywood fakeness, specifically the moments where they clearly are attacking each other's weapon to make sure they clash instead of, how a real fight works. That happens 2 times though. It's only 2 times. The rest of this is so good. My favorite thing is just, they work in the way that the sword is far more wieldy, so Blade doesn't have to swing as wildly, and manages to take advantage through sheer skill and slicing Buffy in the back of the leg. I love this bit of Blade going through the gap in the weapon for leverage. That's so cool. Unfortunately, it does end on about 40 seconds of a really telegraphed win. In fact, that may be my main complaint with the episode overall. The longer the fight goes, the more obvious it is that Buffy's gonna win, at least in my opinion. Buffy never really gets to take any advantage during this fight. Outside of when she overpowers Blade in the toilet room, which even then is only because he stabbed her. She does cut the breathing gun, but that immediately whips back and hits her anyway. The whole fight in general is built around Blade, with Buffy feeling a bit more incidental. The music's Blade, the setting's Blade, the style is Blade, the lighting is Blade. Blade gets all the great moments aside from like the shirt, the push, the bit with the gun, and the death. Most of the stuff I remember is like the vertical suplex, the silly smile, the aura, the shoulder bump, the bit where he's clowning on her in the shitter, any shot involving the gross-ass breathing gun, the bit with the sword and the scythe here, and while I don't necessarily think Buffy needed that many more great moments, in fact, I think it makes a lot more sense for Blade to come off as way cooler, it does feel like the fight is built around Buffy having a dramatic comeback to win, and then she does. Like, imagine if Buffy lost this and everything was the same, except after she goes to stab, Blade manages to duck the next swing and then slice her in half or something. If that had happened, I feel like a lot more people would have been critical on the way Blade just schooled Buffy the whole time. The main thing I would have liked to see more is just Buffy showing off her scrappy fighting more. She really just gets to use her shirt and a glass bottle. I feel like the toilet definitely could have played a role. The bathroom as a whole, I should say, not specifically the shitter. It also kind of fails to show off the conclusion. They conclude that Blade takes abilities, but Buffy takes strength and skill. However, in the fight, Blade is notably stronger for most of it. He overpowers her throughout, and she only manages to overcome him in one bit. It's not necessarily a big deal, but even though Buffy clearly overpowers Blade here, I didn't feel like Buffy was significantly stronger throughout the fight. Skill, however, nah, Buffy isn't shown to be on Blade's level at all. She is absolutely ratioed at the start, aura'd out in the middle, outmatched near the end, and definitively skill diffed in the final battle. She is not even close to his level of skill during the fight. And then while Blade did have the better overall abilities, it didn't feel like a meaningful victory when literally none of them appeared in the fight, and then his many weapons that are all really cool don't do anything to help, and when they are matched directly against Buffy's, they lose. I guess that's the trump card category, which, hey, definitely does come across. With all that being said though, the death is easily my favourite of the live action kills. The fountain of blood spitting out, the shot of the adamantium blade falling in half, and then the shot of the fleshy Blade's eyes dying out, followed by the only part of the fight that feels like Buffy. A soft rock riff, Buffy putting on Blade's glasses, and making an awful pun while acting as if that was an easy win and everything went exactly as intended. Perfect 10 out of 10, no notes. Sure hope that breathing gun bullet doesn't still kill you though. So I've said a lot about this fight, and I think personally, it's easily the best live action fight and one of the coolest fights they've done in terms of aura and style, in my opinion. Its extended length is something I've been pleading for in modern Death Battle, especially with the monthly uploads. Which I know it sounds weird because I wasn't a big fan of Kratos Azura, but it's the way that one used its extended length that bothers me. This tells a story. It feels like it's wanting to be a crossover. This is the story of when Blade and Buffy happened to cross paths taking out vampires, and then after a blatant miscommunication because Blade's an idiot who just wants to aura farm and Buffy's an idiot who doesn't consider context, they end up fighting. Instead of a setup that feels like an excuse, good or bad, for a fight and the characters being vehicles for just action, this feels like a proper short story of what if Buffy and Blade fought. And while I do think the fight leans a bit too far into Blade, thus making it feel obvious that Buffy's going to win around the halfway mark, I can't say that's unrepresentative of how that would go. I think Buffy would yap a lot more. If anything, that's the part that feels un-Buffy, the fact that she isn't consistently trying to piss Blade off with annoying quips. But I don't know how confident I am in Death Battle's ability to make annoying quips feel charming instead of annoying. This really has the energy of one of those 3-issue crossover comics that sometimes come out. Specifically, the brief part in issue 2 where the characters fight and not any of the setup or overarching storyline. I appreciate that. You know, it also differs in that one of them dies, but it's Death Battle. Easily my favorite live action episode, a great addition to the year's lineup. The conclusion then is fine. Buffy being pointed out as having more comics is really funny, and I appreciate the stat category in the way they show multiple ways in which they have very comparable feats, and Buffy's are consistently higher. The corner box is also really funny, especially when the novels are brought up literally just for a few counters Buffy has to a few of Blade's powers. Also, I want to bring it up, Cosmic Ghost Rider is able to be tagged by the breathing gun, and then regular light speed Buffy is placed as fast enough to block what a fucking Ghost Rider wasn't fast enough to block. That's really funny. It's another example of a Ghost Rider being a bum. I love that Zarathos is never even mentioned outside of that one moment. Can we get, like, Zarathos consistently being brought up as being beaten by whatever character has beaten him, only for that to never get mentioned again in the rest of the episode? It's so funny to me. I love it. Zarathos, you are the GOAT. You're a loser, though. So yeah, with all that said, a very good episode. I liked it a lot. The next time is Dante versus Clive Rossfield. I have no thoughts to share that I haven't in the reaction. As long as they properly go into Dante's character, I will have no issues. Clive is also fine. Nice to see Final Fantasy with a non-7 character. That's all I have for you today. We deserve official merch of the DJ, the second best DJ in Death Battle history. And that's the review. That was Blade vs. Buffy. What did you think, everyone? Let me know. Because I always like to know what do people think about the episode. I really don't know what to say, because I'm kind of recording this a little bit further after finishing the review than normal. There's a lot of stuff on my plate, even with the fact that I've had a lot of videos prepared for October. They got a huge ranking, like a 500 place ranking, that is gonna be out probably December, and I just want to get that done and ready for you guys. But God, there's so much stuff to do. I want to get stuff done. But yeah, I gotta record this first. So yes, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everyone for supporting me on Patreon. You're all absolute legends. Yeah. Everyone supporting, you get access to my Patreon-only Discord, where you can make me say stupid stuff. We're just gonna go straight to that. Let's not dawdle this time. Let's just see what they got. Let's just see what they got for me. Or some dumb motherfucker trying to raft upstream. Or some dumb debater trying to scale uphill. Or some motherfucker trying to upfuck ass hill. No, I'm not. You're not getting a cover of the Buck Bumble theme from me. I already fucking said. Shut up. Blade did not actually read the whole 128 novels from the series. A real Guy Gardner fan always speaks ill of Guy Gardner. That is true. That's a true. Give this one a true. No. Or soul dude voice. It's soul dude voice. Can I just say right? I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100,000. Here's a hint. It's the amount of money you make in a year. It makes me think of William Afton. And William Afton makes me want to eat all the mud in the world. I have not seen Billy and Mandy. I do not know what Dracula sounds like in Billy and Mandy. But I will listen to Epic one day. I will do it at some point. Well, bone marrow does produce blood. So I guess a vampire could just suck on the bone marrow. Halloween Rock Paper Scissors. The issue is this implies that skeleton beats vampire, werewolf beats skeleton, vampire beats werewolf. Historically though, not historically, but like in media, usually the werewolf is depicted as like the anti-vampire, the weapon that beats the vampires. Not always, of course. So like there are gonna be times where it does go the other way. But like just thinking about this realistically, a vampire can rip apart a human being that has muscle along with all the skeleton. So the vampire just rips the skeleton apart. The werewolf would also rip the skeleton apart. And between the vampire and the werewolf, I mean, Dracula can just turn into a dragon. That'll fucking do the job. Okay, that's about all the time I've got. I'm very tired. I have a lot of stuff to do. Hopefully this isn't too abrupt, but hope you all enjoyed. Have a good one, folks, and take care of yourself.